Oh my gosh, okay. I'm worried. Christmas, 1984. It was a week until Christmas. My mother pulled her tired car up to Deerbrook Mall and handed me a $10 bill while reminding my two older sisters to not let their eyes off me while we did our Christmas shopping. The three of us hopped out of the car, and as she pulled away, I instantly knew what my sisters were thinking. The mere presence of their 4-year-old sibling was social suicide. If they were to have any chance of meeting boys or hanging out with friends, they would have to dispose of me quickly. And so, after some whimpering and my oldest sister telling me the boogie monster was coming after me that night if I didn't do as they say, I watched them walk away as I stood outside of the 99-cent store. It seemed to me at that age, based on what I'd seen from my sister's behavior, that showing excitement for the little things in life was the most uncool thing to do. Apparently, the more you acted like you didn't care about anything, the cooler you were. I guess now that I'm in my 30s, I'm still not very cool. I have a terrible memory, so everyday things still excite me. So I walked into the 99-cent store and began my hunt for the perfect presents for my family. In full disclosure, I was a daddy's girl. I had a pixie cut with a rat tail. I wore suspenders and penny loafers with pennies in them. And I liked jumping off of buildings. A real thrill seeker, if you will. I know that when you're born, you're instantly attached to your parents because they nurture and feed you. But I think the day my dad became my hero was when he pried a never-ending gobstopper from my throat as I was choking on it, blue in the face, and the Heimlich not working. Or perhaps it was the time I got onto the top of the restaurant he owned and we lived in, and one of his employees frantically rushed into the kitchen yelling, "Mr. Brach, your daughter is on the roof again, and she's going to jump." Just like a movie, he ran out as I was jumping and caught me. My dreams of flying were so vivid. I knew I could do it. And to this day, I've never broken a bone from one of my leaps of faith. So it was easy finding presents for Vanessa, Danielle, and Mom, but Dad was more difficult. It would have been easier to find him a gift if I had $1 million or owned the world. I'd just give those to him. But since I was down to $4, I felt at 4 years of age a great deal of pressure and concern that perhaps this chump change wasn't enough for the biggest champion in my life. I scoured each row, aisle, and shelf for what seemed like hours, and I felt defeated. Nothing here is good enough. What was I going to do? I can't give him another terribly drawn picture. If I painted like Van Gogh, maybe. But was Van Gogh even good enough? No, not even close. A book, perhaps? Ooh, this one has an interesting cover with a boy wearing a crown. No, this isn't good enough either. My father's stories were the best I'd ever heard. My dad started the Cinderella Liberty stories just a year ago when I was 3. They were about a brave young warrior princess who defeated all that challenged her. She was me. To this day, they beat any Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter book I've ever read. They may also be the reason I'm bossy and stubborn and what you would call a real ball buster. I finally gave up and headed to the checkout lane. I wanted to cry. How was I to show my father how much I loved him this Christmas without a brilliant present that represents everything he means to me? And just as I was second in line at the counter, the person in front of me shifted, and this bright gold light flickered up, and I looked to find his present. Oh, joy. It's a trophy that says number 1 on it. That's my dad. My dad is number 1 and everyone else is second. Thank you, God. Thank you, world. Thank you, tall man, for shifting in line. I had the register clerk grab the trophy for me. She gave me a puzzled look, but proceeded to ring up each of my gifts and place them in a plastic 99-cent store bag. My sisters came for me shortly after, embarrassed that they even had to escort me from that point on, and home we went. The day before Christmas, I lazily wrapped my sister's presents and saved my dad's to be wrapped last. I thought using newspaper as wrapping paper would add a creative and environmentally conscious effect. My dad was big on using newspaper and vinegar to clean everything, and he thought Windex and paper towels were the government's scheme to con Americans into a more consumer-driven society. So I used 2 sheets from the paper and spent the next 10 minutes wrapping his number 1 trophy until my short attention span got the best of me, and I laid the present under the Christmas tree and went about my day. That night, my sisters and I slept on the couches in the living room, hoping to catch a glimpse of Santa Claus, but giving in to sleep before midnight ever reached. 6 a.m., Christmas Day. And I'm the first one up. I wake my sisters and we all run into my parents' room and jump on their bed yelling, "Wake up, it's Christmas!" And by 8 o'clock, we were all in our pajamas and robes, coffee in my parents' hands, as Vanessa passed each present to the rightful recipient. When she handed my present to my father, I told him, "Please wait until the last gift has been opened to open it." I wanted the excitement to peak and to make sure that everyone in the room had nothing else to do but watch his face beam as he unwrapped my present. I also wanted my cool sisters to know that I loved him more than they did, so there. What seemed like an obscene amount of time passed, and I was grateful for all my presents, but I just wanted my dad to open his. And finally, that time came. I held my breath. My body tingled with a rush of energy and anticipation as my father finally unwrapped his gift and then slowly proceeded to wrap it back up. My sisters and mom yelled, "Show us, what is it?" Danielle, my oldest sister, grabbed for the present, and my dad, whose face had grown red and angry, yelled for her to stop just as she pulled out my gift. There was an instant of silence before the entire room, aside from my dad and a mortified me, began to howl with laughter. The walls shook with laughter. My mom and sisters were hysterical, and I began crying. Why were they making a mockery of me? This isn't funny. I didn't want to upset my father. What is going on? My dad yelled at them. I can't remember what he said. I was crying too much. He held me in his lap and hugged me, and we cried together because although the trophy didn't say what I thought it did, he knew what I was trying to tell him. I never saw the trophy again, and no one told me what it said for years to come. Until one day, about 14 years later, my mom told me what it said. World's #1 prick.